Today on the show, we're going to be talking about some really old movies. Really old movies. Like really, really old movies. Welcome back to Geek Channel 8. I'm Eric.
I'm Will. I still haven't watched the final season of Andor. I think I might be able to handle it right now, but for me, it's going to be an emotional ride. It's not escapism. It's the other kind of fantasy, the kind that shows you a mirror. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I just finished reading The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Native American horror is having a moment right now
Oh
between
my.
like Stephen Graham Jones and going back and a few other writers. So I'm reading this thing, and as I'm getting through it, I'm like, wait a minute, I recognize this. This is Deer Woman. I know this legend. It occurred to me there was a Masters of Horror that was directed by John Landis about Deer Woman that I hadn't watched, one of the episodes I hadn't watched. And I'm like, I'm going to watch that as soon as I'm done reading this book. And I get to the last page and flip it over to the acknowledgments, and he's like acknowledging stuff. And one of them is that episode
Ah, nice.
of Masters of Horror. And he starts talking about it. So I'm like, all right, I'm not going to read that. So I went and watched Deer Woman. Tonally very different. Stephen Graham Jones is like heavy stuff, and John Landis, if you're familiar with him, like American Werewolf in London and stuff like that, is like much more the comedy end of horror. But both were excellent, so definitely recommend both.
Can't be mad about that.
All right, so joining our panel this week is the author of the novella Haunted Ones and the poetry book A Portrait of a Poison. She's a regular contributor to MovieWeb, where she writes about science fiction, fantasy, and horror films and TV. Welcome, Kino McFarland. Thanks for joining us.
Hey.
Thanks for slumming with us. I feel like, we'll do our best, but like, I don't know. That's some heavy stuff you got going on there.
What do you mean heavy stuff?
I mean, I have not written anything, so I'm like, oh, I don't know. What am I going to say? I don't know.
We'll get to your expertise and I think in an upcoming show.
Okay, copy that.
We are beginning our deep dive into movies about Frankenstein. And although we're not getting too into it in the beginning, electricity will play a big role in some of the films we're going to watch coming up. And so, you being an electrician, I am going to be deferring to you on some of the technical aspects of reanimating the dead using electricity.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm just gonna say, there's not enough use of brine in most of these movies. I mean, if I was going to reanimate the dead, I definitely would want to add more salt to their bodies, but we'll see how that goes. We'll see what's going on.
The first film we're going to talk about today is Thomas Edison's adaptation, or Edison Studios' adaptation of Frankenstein from 1910. So we're going to jump into our time machine and go back here a bit. I'm going to give the background to the year. So about the year leading up to the release of this. In April 19th of 1909, the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, today known as BP, is incorporated. May 17th of 1909, Edison Manufacturing Company released the short film The Life of an American Policeman, which was one of the earliest multi-scene narratives, story-based cinema. June 29th of 1909, the New York Motion Picture Company is formed. It's an early rival to the Edison Trust and helped build the independent U.S. film industry. July 16th, 1909, the Detroit Tigers versus the Washington Senators play 18 scoreless innings before darkness ends the game in a 0-0 tie. This is the record for longest scoreless Major League Baseball game until it was later broken on September 11th, 1945, when the Brooklyn Dodgers played the Cincinnati Reds for 19 scoreless innings.
Oh my gosh. Sounds so horrible. Sorry, I am not a baseball fan. I'm like, that just like the epitome. I'm like, oh, how could you make this any worse? Yeah.
I've been, I'm a videographer, so I have actually been at scoreless games, like just sitting there, like, okay, here we are.
Yeah, and you have to like when they break off, it's like, oh, let's talk about this guy because there's nothing else going on. You have to be like, okay, which one is that guy?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've got a headset on, and so when they start talking about someone, I got to go find that person, and it's always a pain because it's someone that's sitting in the dugout or something. All right, August 2nd of 1909, the U.S. Army Signal Corps purchased the first military airplane from the Wright brothers.
Wow. Sheesh.
September 4th, 1909, Japan and China signed the Gando Convention affecting rail concessions in Manchuria. October 26th, 1909, Ito Hirobumi, former Japanese premier and resident general of Korea, was assassinated at Harbin Station. November 28th, 1909, Sergei Rachmaninoff premiered his Piano Concerto No. 3 in New York City with the composer as soloist. December 21st, 1909, press reports note mounting public pressure for film regulation and local censorship boards in the US. So yeah, film just started and now they're already censoring it, right?
Get into this, but I understand because they did a lot with what they had. They were making some fields happen. So yeah, fair.
January 12th of 1910, the Great January Comet is first observed, sparking apocalyptic and doom-laden press reactions. February 1st, 1910, a coal mine explosion at the Browder Coal Company in Drakesboro, Kentucky kills 34 miners. And then March 18th, 1910, Frankenstein is released. It was produced by Edison Studios and directed by J. Cyril Dawley, I think is how you say his name, who adapted the screenplay from Mary Shelley's 1918 novel. They shot it at Edison's Bronx studio over 3 days, January 13th, January 15th, and January 17th of 1910. Edison publicly said, quote, "To those familiar with Mrs. Shelley's story, it will be evident that we have carefully omitted anything which might be any possibility shock any portion of an audience. In making the film, the Edison Company has carefully tried to eliminate all the actually repulsive situations and to concentrate its endeavors upon the mystic and psychological problems that are to be found in the weird tale. Wherever, therefore, the film differs from the original story, it is purely with the idea of eliminating what would be repulsive to a moving picture audience." Unquote. Okay, at silent projection speeds, which is around 16 frames per second, the film runs about 16 minutes. Modern 24 frames per second is closer to 11. Since this is out there and available everywhere on streaming platforms and the Library of Congress has it and stuff like that, I slow it down to 3/4 of speeds, which closer resembles it because I hate the sped up look of silent films that is out of sync with what it was originally like intended to look like. It's a pet peeve of mine. The standout moment and what people remember it for is the monster's creation, which they achieved by burning a dummy and manipulating its limbs and then reversing the footage so it looks like it's assembling from vapors and fire. Contemporary reaction at the time, it was mixed. Trade papers praised the creation scene as, quote, "the most remarkable ever committed to film," unquote. But some critics were uneasy about showing death and horror on screen. They thought that it pandered to morbid tastes and was a turnoff to general audiences. The Edison Studios typically printed about 40 copies of their films, and after 6 months, a 6-month run, they were returned to the lab and recycled for their silver content because it was on silver emulsion, right? So there was a fire in 1914 at the Bronx studio and at the Orange, New Jersey manufacturing plant. It destroyed almost all of the film prints and negatives held in storage. So for a long time, the film was forgotten, like completely forgotten. People forgot that it even existed, right? Then in the 60s, an amateur film sleuth came across the kinetogram cover of Frankenstein, stored among the millions of documents preserved in the archives of the Edison National Historic Site in West Orange, New Jersey. It was the photo of Ogle in the Frankenstein makeup. And then, like, monster magazines like Famous Monsters of Filmland and stuff ran with it. And they're like, oh, this is the lost Frankenstein film. In 1980, the American Film Institute declared Edison's Frankenstein one of the top 10 culturally historical lost films. But as luck would have it, a single copy of the film had survived in the basement of a Wisconsin film collector named Aloy Detlaff, who acquired it in the 1950s for a few dollars. He made a preservation copy of it in the 1970s and screened it for the public for the first time since like 1910 for the public in 1993 and released it on DVD himself with 1,000 copy print run only in 2003. So it was still almost impossible to find for years after that until in 2014, the Library of Congress purchased his entire film collection. And in 2018, which is the 200th anniversary of the novel, they completed a restoration and made it available for streaming and download with a new soundtrack by Donald Sosin. It stars Augustus Phillips as Dr. Frankenstein, Charles Stanton Ogle as the monster, and Mary Fuller as Elizabeth. Okay, you guys ready to talk about the film?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is described as, quote, a liberal adaptation of Mrs. Shelley's famous story, unquote, and it follows the young Frankenstein. So Frankenstein departs for college. And then the very next title screen is like 2 years later, Frankenstein has discovered the mystery of life. I'm like, damn, that was like fast. Like, what kind of drugs was he doing at college, you know? So he writes to his fiance and says they'll marry once he succeeds in his experiments. And spoiler, he succeeds in creating a creature by mixing chemicals. Uh, any reactions to the first few minutes of this?
The first few minutes,
Yeah.
like it's all just a few minutes. When I first started watching it, I was like, wow, this is not really Frankenstein. Yeah, I thought all of the interesting bits were cut out.
Yeah. Well, film censors, you know?
You know?
The hand stretching out reminded me of the hand in Nosferatu, like when the creature's like arm is stretching out and stuff like that. So there's some stuff. There's definitely I could see how it'd be creepy at the time.
The long fingers, that's what I noted, and the elongated forehead. I mean, like he had some kind of prosthesis on top, right? These are things that I'm like, okay, I see a through line, and I'm going to shame myself in front of a whole bunch of geeks by saying I've never read the original Frankenstein. I think the Frankenstein I read when I was a kid was like it's kind of like there's a treasure island for kids. I think it was like that. So but I've never read the original Frankenstein, so I don't really know what the actual descriptions were. And of course there's a whole, our society has given us an idea of what to expect. Well, that's what a Frankenstein looks like. We don't even just call it a Frankenstein. That's what they are. But yeah, I thought it was this whole lurking and everything, and my impression immediately was like, oh, okay, so this is as dark as they're getting with this, which was still cool. The special effects were amazing, but like, oh, they say he had evil in his heart, and so basically he came back wrong. I was like, okay, let's see what that looks like.
Couple of things. So first of all, I want to point out that not many people have read the original Frankenstein. I have not read the original Frankenstein. I've read the 1831 version of Frankenstein. There are two versions of Frankenstein. Mary Shelley originally wrote it, as we said earlier, in 1818. She released an updated version in 1831. The 1831 version is the version that I've read. It's also shows like influenced by Lord Byron and Shelley in it. There's parts where you're like, okay, Percy Shelley wrote this bit. It's just like too poetic to be Mary. You can sort of pick out parts like that. As far as him coming back wrong and all of that, the scene takes place mostly in one place or two places. He's in his study at one point and there's a mirror. And the monster's reveal in the mirror is a horror movie trope we still have today, where it's like they'll
Yeah.
be like the usually final girl will be in like the bathroom and like she's like putting on makeup and then she closes the mirror and then like boom, the slasher or whatever's like right there in the mirror. It wasn't exactly like that, but it was pretty close for like 1910,
So the mirror lets you show more of the scene because you got one camera. You're not moving that sucker. It's just single camera straight on, and you can see people coming from behind the other. It gives you more to look at. And then, of course, it comes up later towards the end.
Yeah, remind me to bring that up when we get toward the end, because the end mirror scene I want to talk about. But the first time we see him, like, then the monster goes and hides behind the curtain, like when people come in, and I'm kind of like, okay, that was kind of comedic, but also, why the hell was the monster hiding? Kina is cracking up.
Good point.
I'm kind of like, so in the novel, the monster hides a bunch because he's hideous and doesn't want to like reveal himself. So there's some of that, I guess, but it's kind of like, I don't get it.
There's a divide. Does the monster come out knowing and fully like knowing as awake and aware, does it come out as an innocent? Okay, so those are two divides. But underneath this, to me, I'm like, what was this evil that was in him that came out in the monster? Oh, was it lust? I mean, what was going? That's why I'm like, there's this idea that he put all these creative forces into the monster, and he came out, and the monster came out and was like, I need something. I need to be complete, which is, let's face it, throughout all of the genre, there's always like the monster's like, wow, I'm missing one thing. I need a bride. And I just think it's interesting that this is shown in the sanitized version. I don't think anybody kisses in this. I mean, I'm not sure if anybody kisses in any of the things we're talking about today, but like they sure do show the eyes and the faces and like, I feel for you, and the grasping of the hearts, and the man, it's like I don't know what, I mean, you weren't hiding anything, you just weren't showing things. But you were telling us exactly what this was about, always. But you just weren't showing. So which is, I think it's really instructive in terms of like, hey, art forced into a narrow aperture, it can really push the creative juices. So I love the idea that there's this the monster that he's hiding is his own worst impulses.
His own worst impulses. Let's talk about that for a second. So this doesn't have a long time to build up the story here. So they just shorthand the monster finding out he's like a monster and horrible and all of that by seeing himself in the mirror. So he comes back on Dr. Frankenstein's wedding night and then like goes into the bedroom with the fiance, and then there's a scream. So there's a couple of things going on here. One, I don't know what sexual stuff they're implying, but also they can't show murder on screen either. So it's like they just conveniently walk into the other room and then come back, so there's that. And then finally, the horror inside himself. We don't know if the monster's even real in this. It might be a Jekyll and Hyde sort of thing where he sees himself in the mirror as the monster at the end. And everyone talks about the creation scene being the cool special effects of this movie. But to me, the coolest special effect was this mirror, because the mirror perfectly reflects what's in the room. When you see people walk in the room, you see their reflection. That part's not faked. And so there's everything you see, the decor in the room. But when the monster's in the mirror and he's on the other side, they really did a good magic trick there, because you cannot tell, like everything else in the room looks the same. I thought that was super cool.
Go away to college, you do a lot of drugs, your personality gets split between your good clean and mindful, upstanding citizen, and like the deep, and then, but you know what can fix all of that? Love. Love can fix everything, and it can cast out the demons and make you pure and whole again.
This was just a short. This is like the appetizer for the main film here. So I want to say final reactions to this. I thought that it was good, especially for the time. Most silent films we watch are like 10 years after this. This is like really early. I don't think it's that scary. It might have been at the time, but I think unfortunately the Edison Manufacturing Company, like themselves, they said, they toned it down. I wish they hadn't have done that because I think they could have made a film that held up better. Like I've said before, when we did Nosferatu, the 1920 version, it holds up. If you watch that thing with the lights out, it's still kind of creepy.
Yeah.
This one, not as much. That's my reaction.
I did not like it. And I've seen it before. I think the transformation scene was like the longest part of the whole movie. It was basically the whole movie.
Yeah.
It was just like you back and forth from the transformation or the creature to Frankenstein, and then you're back again, and then back again. And it's just like, how many times are we going to keep on going back and forth? I was just sitting here like, this is the entire film.
It was instructive. I'm glad I saw it. I always like to see the bones that everything else has been built on. I mean, like you said, like, oh wow, check it out, the mirror seeing, things like that. We don't even need to know for sure. It's just like, hey, let's peel back the skin a little bit and look at where did we come from, in our current incarnation. I think we're going to see even more of that going forward in our session today, because I'm like, wow, some of this stuff I can honestly say, I'm like, I feel like they were more advanced. Not this movie. Storytelling, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, it was fine. It wasn't anything where I'm like, I'm glad I saw it. And it was instructive. But like going forward, I think we're going to really have some more to talk about.
So this brings up the split between the literary Frankenstein and the cinematic Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
They diverge almost from the get-go here. The cinematic versions of Frankenstein derive from other film sources more than they do the book in some ways. And so we're going to talk about some of those other films that influenced the Frankenstein on film that we're more familiar with today. They aren't necessarily straight adaptations of Frankenstein. There are other things that influenced it. One of them comes up in our next film that we're going to talk about. The movie we're going to talk about here was actually a series of movies. It was a serialized film called Homunculus, also about the creation of life. The film came out in 1916, so quick background of the year for that. July 5th of 1915, the SS Falaba was torpedoed and sunk by German U-28 off of Ireland. So we already have submarines in warfare in 1915. Talking about the air, August 23rd of 1915, German Zeppelins bombed Great Yarmouth and King's Lynn on England's east coast. September 15th of 1915, the first successful transatlantic radio transmission of speech is reported by experimenters. October 24th, 1915, mass deportations and massacres of Armenians continue across the Ottoman Empire. November 7th, 1915, experimental transcontinental telephone tests link New York and San Francisco. December 6th, 1915, premiere in Berlin of the stage play Der Golem. January 10th of 1916, demonstrations in the UK and the USA keep the women's suffrage campaign in the headlines. February 21st, 1916, the Battle of Verdun begins. March 9th and 10th of 1916, Pancho Villa's raid on Columbus, New Mexico prompts U.S. military planning and headlines. April 24th of 1916, the Easter Rising begins in Dublin as Irish Republicans seize key locations. And then May 31st of 1916, the Battle of Jutland is fought between the British Grand Fleet and the German High Seas Fleet. So that is what's going on before June 12th, 1916, Homunculus, the German silent expressionist sci-fi serial, premieres in Berlin. It's a serial that was directed by Otto Rippert from a script by Robert Reinert. Some sources also list Robert Noose as a co-writer. It was produced by Deutsche Bioscope. Notably, a very young Fritz Lang worked on the shoot as one of Rippert's assistants. And that's notable because he would go on to make his own automaton movie Metropolis in 1927, right? The serial was released in 6 parts in Germany between the summer of 1916 and January of 1917, with chapter titles that trace a pretty operatic arc. Chapter 1 was The Birth of the Homunculus. Chapter 2, The Mysterious Book. Chapter 3, The Love Tragedy of the Homunculus. Chapter 4, The Revenge of the Homunculus. Chapter 5, The Destruction of Humanity. And Chapter 6, The End of the Homunculus. Originally, each of the 6 parts ran for roughly an hour apiece. So we're talking 6 hours.
Wow.
This is what remains of those films. Much of the original material is lost. Only part 4 and a fragment of part 5 were believed to exist for many years, for many decades, actually. It was later edited down to a 3-chapter reissue in September of 1920 with new intertitles and tinted prints, and a 76-minute tinted Italian intertitled print is at the George Eastman Museum. There was a major recovery effort by the Munich Film Museum. I think Stefan Dressler located 27 reels in a Moscow archive that had been cut up and mismatched and sort of like had to puzzle them back together. And that reconstruction restored about 196 minutes, and it was screened in August 2014 at the Bonn Silent Film Festival. So now's a good time to talk about film preservation, because as we did with the last one and this one, there's not a lot of silent films left. Going back and watching or rewatching some of these films is interesting for me. Like, I've watched Metropolis several times in my life, and every time it's different because they keep finding more stuff, you know? So the Metropolis I first watched when I was a teenager and the last time I watched it are different. And I have to go rewatch it now because there's even more since the last time that has been found and restored. And I understand why a lot of these silent films I didn't think were that great the first time I saw them, because they were missing so much, you know? Now, I got to talk about AI for a second, because a lot of what we're dealing with here is artificial intelligence. The creation of Frankenstein's monster or whatever is AI. And there's also a lot of talk about generative AI these days in the news. And a lot of people, I'm not like super pro AI and I'm not super anti AI, but I think it has its uses. And this could be a good use for it, for stuff where we know it's gone forever. Like, parts of this movie and parts of the Frankenstein film are like just so degraded that they don't look good or you can't see much. Instead of like using generative AI to create whole new movies and stuff like that, when we could be, you know, casting actual people in them, you know, and stuff like that. These films, even as short as they are, there are hundreds of thousands of frames, and you could use those to train the AI to restore the bits that are missing based on what's actually there. And that, in my opinion, would be a good use of AI for some of these things. We'll talk more about AI as we go on, because I have some questions and comments about AI for this film and other films after that.
My fear would be that as time goes on, it's like, yeah, we discovered more new stuff, and it just made up by AI, and you know that the average person certainly wouldn't know. And the fact is that even the fact that you could do it makes everything suspect. Everybody here on the panel, I'm sure, knows film has never been reality, but it's less reality than ever now. And at this point, we're just talking about, hey, let's make a fake version of this fake thing, this fake fiction. Even in that, it's like, well, wait a second. What if, say, this is a very influential film, but the stuff they uncover, quote unquote, it just changes the message to match whatever is okay, you know, right now. That's it. I mean, I'm not even saying I'm afraid of that. I'm just saying that is going to happen. It's inevitable, and it's something that we have to deal with.
I'm not sure that they're not already using AI. I saw at least one reference to it at some point in the past,
Yeah.
long before AI became like the hot topic it is now. The film preservationists were talking about it. Of course, anyone that uses Photoshop knows we've been using AI for decades now.
And even preservation that you're doing as a human, like there's so many times where it's like, we preserve this carefully. Well, you did that 50 years ago. Now we're going back and we're fixing how you preserved it because you did it wrong. It's just inevitable. So it is what it is.
I definitely want to talk about creating stuff and like not knowing what the ramifications of what you created are. Like that is going to come up over and over again as we watch these Frankenstein films. So just put a pin in that for now, because we will get back to the AI discussion later. The version I found of this had no music accompaniment. Was that the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I watched. Yeah.
I chose my own accompaniment. I played Unknown Pleasures and Closer, the entire albums, and the Ideal for Living EP by Joy Division. That was what I chose for my soundtrack. But I want to point out that even when these movies showed in theaters, there was someone there playing the piano and a pipe organ or whatever, and like it would have been different everywhere.
My great grandma used to do that.
Whoa, that's cool.
Oh, cool.
My great grandma played the organ at the cinemas.
Awesome. Which one? Do you know?
No clue. Somewhere in Kentucky, probably. But
So whenever we watch a silent film, choose your own music. Play whatever you want to play, whatever you think's going to go good with it. You don't have to listen to the one that is on the official soundtrack, because it's not official. Like I just mentioned when we were doing Frankenstein that when they released it, they just got some guy to compose new music for it, you know? So anyway, I did Joy Division's first two albums and first EP. Okay. So this movie's a little disjointed because of course we had like 6 hours edited down to a one feature length.
the whole thing was very ambitious, honestly. Like I was pretty impressed with how, like, you could definitely tell they were trying something that was a little out of their limit, but they tried. I do have to mention that nobody warned me that there was a dog that died, and I'm very mad at Eric for the dog dying.
I'll talk about the dog dying soon, but
Yeah, that kind of freaked me out.
that is one of the best parts, in my opinion, because it's like it really pisses you off, and you're like, okay, now I see. Like now you're definitely on the monster side, right? It's like, yeah,
Right.
just kill the humans, you know?
Wow. The thing that was different was I'm used to, these creation, the AI creation stories, they start with a fully formed adult. And this did not.
Mm.
Okay. And as a matter of fact, in a way, it kind of resembles some of the changeling stories where it's like, you got swapped at birth with a fae, right? So that was impressive to me. We love these heroes, anti-heroes, or whatever, especially now, where it's like, you don't got any parents. No one, you have no parents. We really don't want to deal with that. But they did. They brought that back later. There was all this complex stuff around the edges of like, it wasn't just science, and then I create you and raise you to be my servant, and then you rebel against me, which is like so played, right? This was different. I mean, very early on, it's like, oh, so dude he seems like he has a good life. He's a gentleman or whatever, but like he's unhappy because he doesn't understand love. I mean, it's wow.
Let me catch the audience up in case they didn't watch the film, but it starts at a lecture, and then the scientist creates a living creature called a homunculus, which is Latin for little man, in a laboratory. And it cuts to a crib, and there's a baby that's sick, and the father, before he leaves for a conference, entrusts the baby to Dr. Ortman, a guy that looks like a mad scientist. It's like, okay, here, mad scientist, take care of my baby, And then, so Dr. Ortman decides to substitute the homunculus for the baby. And then he tells a friend, Steffrens. Then it skips 25 years later, and like the homunculus goes off to college. So unlike the first film where Dr. Frankenstein goes off to college, in this one, the creature goes off to college. And he's a bit of a misanthrope. He can't feel love. He believes, let's just say he's neurodivergent, right? They wouldn't have said that at the time, but he is. And so he learns that there's something about his birth that was unusual. And he finally confronts Steffens and asks him for the truth. And when he learns the truth, he, of course, hates his creator and he wants a soul. So in the part one, The Birth of the Homunculus, is when he befriends a dog. And then the daughter of a prince, I think, and the prince is dying. Anyway, the homunculus says he can heal him, and he dresses and acts like a goth edgelord. So I'm talking all black, cape, cane, top hat, black boots, eyeshadow, slick black hair, the works, dude. And then, he commands the prince to get up, and somehow it works. And so the grateful prince offers him wealth, and he says it means nothing. He just asks that one day they won't attack him. Right? So that's part one.
Yeah.
I feel like it covers a lot of ground.
And I just want to say, when I look at his look, everything about it, obviously they were communicating something directly to us. There was never going to be any colors, but in particular, the guy they chose, the way they made up his face, it is stark, it is flat, it's edged. It's like, oh my God, you guys knew what you were doing. I don't know enough about silent film to know whether they were drawing from previous. I don't know enough about theater to know what they're drawing, but they knew what they were doing with this guy. And the way he just was, this compelling face. Then, and we see the beginnings of this, the very first parts where it's the women who come across him are just compelled by him. They see him and they're like, whoa. But no matter how they behave, he can't react to that. And I'm torn between I'm like, wow, if I were 12, I'd be like, that dude is the man. And now I'm like, well, I mean, you want if you want love, it's right there. You're just too busy being angsty.
Like what you say about the whole how he's angular and everything, because that reminds me of the whole German Expressionism thing. It's he's clearly the humanization of German Expressionism.
Yeah, I had to check to make sure it wasn't the same guy from Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I'm like, he looks like that dude, but it's not. Different actor.
I don't know what the timing is supposed to be. I'm not sure if he's supposed to be immortal and just wandering the earth. His, they say his science created will can compel him. And I think this is where a book starts becoming important. I don't know how the book ties into him.
Yeah. So part two is called The Mysterious Book, and the prince's advisor accused the homunculus of witchcraft. So it's no good deed goes unpunished, right? And all these things, if you use any kind of special powers, whether they be magic or science, to do something good in what's essentially a horror movie, they're going to come for your ass. And they do. And of course, if it was a woman, she'd be a witch. I think they call him a witch. I don't know. They accuse him of witchcraft. They steal his book, and a horse chase ensues.
Yeah.
So you got horses, all right? You had to deal with dead dog, but you got horses.
I remember that now. Yeah.
The guy who stole the book throws it off cliff, and then the guy off the cliff. And then he sees the book floating in the lake and grabs it. And then he's attacked by a mob. Ileana finds it and takes it to hide it in an old Moorish castle. And that's where he's found by Rodin. And apparently he was followed. The villagers also discover them and light a bonfire to smoke them out. Okay, so here we already got what's not from the book Frankenstein, but some of the main tropes of Frankenstein, like the angry mob, the use of fire, the old creepy castle, all that stuff. That's part two.
Yeah, the angry mob I thought was I'm like, wow. I think they explore this more later. It's oh yeah, mobs are mindless. What are they mad about? He saved your king, your prince. Now you're just oh, nope, now time to go kill him. Somebody told us to do that. He very clearly leaves everyone alone. He's not even hanging out with them, and they always come looking for him. And the poor dog, the one dog who befriends him, he has well, how can I put this? I don't know whether it's just like, look, dogs are there's nothing complex there. Didn't want anything from him except companionship. I mean, yeah, that made me like, oh yeah, you gotta kill all these fools. It's like,
So yeah, that's part 3. Basically, Homunculus and Ileana and Rodan escape through like the dungeon part of this castle, but the dog is killed and he's overcome with grief and he buries the dog, and then he goes into the lab with
Rodan.
Rodan and they create some super weapon. I'm not sure what that's all about. He then sees some young lovers and he uses his power to make the girl fall in love with him. This part, a lot of people think was an influence on a lot of the early vampire films. He basically stalks her to her house, watches her through the window sleeping. He uses his powers to make her fall in love with him and stuff like that.
I'm going to give a counterpoint. He came by and he had passed them, right? And as soon as he went past, she's like, that man, his look thrust a cold dagger into my heart. And I was like, uh-oh. It's like, I'm not even clear that yes, there was a connection. I'm not even clear. It's like, oh, he was purposely doing anything. He can't help it. He's just that magnetic. And, he's drawn to her and, she's drawn to him. But I love the tragedy that unfolds with this because it's like, she had a boo, right? Did he kill her man while she was away with the homunculus? We don't know that, but while she was away with the homunculus, her parents come and tell her, while you were away, your beloved died, and she's just like, oh, okay, well, that's too bad. I'm still not leaving.
My guess, and it's pure supposition, is that, most of this film is lost. My guess is that something happens, he kills him or whatever, and it's part of the footage we just don't have. And what we do have is days later when her parents show up and say, your boyfriend's dead, and they try to convince her to leave him, and she doesn't. And later her mother dies of grief, and her father again tries to get her to leave the homunculus. It's like the age-old story. It's like, this guy sucks, like you should leave him. Like, no, I don't want to leave him. And then she stays. He tells her his story, what he really is, and then that breaks the spell. She's frightened. I thought the dagger in the heart part early on meant that she was repulsed by him, but then he used magic to get her, and then she finally leaves, and she returns to find her father dying, and Homunculus pleads with her to come back, and when she refuses, he becomes enraged, and she tells him that she lost everything because of him. So then he leaves.
It's really a classic toxic relationship.
Yeah,
it totally is. Some things never change. Yeah.
Okay, so we have this whole thing going on, in the zeitgeist now, where men is like, see, this is how women are. But like, it's just like, well, I showed you my true self, and then you wanted to leave. It's like, well, maybe you should have done that in the first place, and she could have had a real choice. But like, all of it, it's just, I love that it still speaks to everything. I love the ambiguousness. We don't know how this came about. We don't know what happened. Even when they show them together, it's all faces together and close, and like hearts and grasping and heaving bosoms, all ambiguous. For all we know, they're just sitting around with each other, like vibing, but like she can't leave him. And
so because he used magic. Now, here's the thing. He used magic. Let's not forget that there was a woman back at college that totally loved him that he just like had nothing to do with, right?
Exactly. Right. Well, and even the princess from before, she was vibing with him. And he was like, whatever, I don't care. I don't want anything from you, but you can feed my dog. The chances are there for like a real connection, and there's no real indication that, oh yeah, you're not there for it. So I like the ambiguousness of it. It lets us read things into it that are straight from our modern times. There was no incels. Even 20 years ago, there was no incels to compare him to. But now it'd be like, oh, well, you got to, so you could just be like, have a normal relationship with a woman, but instead you got to destroy the world, huh? All right, whatever.
I think rather than an incel, he's more like a sociopath. Like he has no soul.
What makes you think there's a difference?
Like he doesn't have that in him.
He likes the dog.
Yeah. He liked the dog.
I wouldn't say he's like a sociopath or has no soul, because like he actually like could like have a relationship with the dog. Like if you can at least like that, then like you're not a total sociopath. You're just like well, he clearly has some kind of empathy. He has some kind of empathy. So he's not like totally gone. Maybe he just thinks he is and then just doesn't realize that he is capable of love. It's just misguided.
I think that's true. And we find out some of this in part 4. Part 4 is called Revenge of the Homunculus. It's back in the dark, against the world phase. Homunculus has become the head of a major corporation now. So now he is like the sociopath equivalent of like one of these billionaire tech dudes.
Right?
He's like the Elon Musk or something of his time. Anyway, he has no compassion for the common people, right? None. Which something we'll see again in Metropolis. But anyway, he has no compassion. Rodan maybe is his body double. He has a body double that has to like go around with him, I guess, because people want to kill him. So he and his body double, they end up dressing like peasants and going among the common people. And then it turns out he's not really all about just the corporation and acquiring wealth. He's all about destroying everything. So he goes amongst the common people and seeds discontent among them against his own corporation. And then he rouses a mob against the corporation. Then he goes back and changes back to lead the oligarchs against the people. And meanwhile, there's Xenia comes back into it, is the woman who loves him, and she follows him but can't get his attention. She knows he's a homunculus, and she doesn't care. So he threatens her since she knows his secret, but she's willing to die for him.
Yeah, she's ready to throw herself off. It's like, whoa, boy.
He stops her, sends her back, and then the common people see her as a traitor and chase her, and she runs to the homunculus, and he changes back to his peasant garb and challenges them and takes her as his queen and all kinds of stuff. That's basically the 4th chapter of this, you know?
Yeah. Well, all you need is love. Da 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 da.
Oh no, my brain is just gone now.
We are in the middle of examining. Yeah, this is a Pinocchio story. This is a, whether it's Pinocchio, Spock, Dexter, Data, all these people who can't feel emotions and want to be real boys, who always think that they're not fitting in correctly and they're just faking it. We love them because they reflect our feeling of not fitting in and we're just faking it. I don't know what to do when at a funeral. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to feel. I don't know how to act. Why can't I have love like I see other people having love?
It reminds me of high school.
Right? I want what he has. My life won't be complete without that. And then it's like you get it. It's like, that's not what I want. No, it has to be. She has to accept me for me. And it's like, you angsty bastard. You had to destroy the whole world for this. You could just be like, oh wait, what I'm actually experiencing is reality. And no, you got to break everything. I mean, I forget what was it. The movie that's pointing out to us how dangerous that the pop love songs are because they give you some horrible expectations. It's like that. It's like, oh man, you read one romance novel, Homunculus, and you're like, I need that. And now that's why you had to destroy the world.
In the end of this, the epilogue, he burns the book. He flashes back on his life, all the people that loved him and the dog, and then the peasants that followed him, destruction of the castle, everything. He goes into the woods. There he meets a character that I think is supposed to represent death.
Yeah.
And he climbs to the top of a mountain and in a thunderstorm jumps to his death or its death. And from that, we're told new life springs. That is, I think they had to put in like some bit of hope at the end of this, but
Oh man, that what a ride, right? I mean,
oh man. All right. So final thoughts. What did you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down, Will?
oh, thumbs all the way up. I love that. I keep on discovering it's like, oh yeah, and we invented like, anti-heroes. Oh, bullshit. I mean, I was thinking about all the things that Byrne would make where there's like this malcontent who hates the world and he's like, master of the world or, Nemo. And they're like, we hate the world and through science we will destroy it. The broodiness, the darkness. You could have a nice life, but you just won't do it. And I love that. I want it more. I could see it as a comic book. Can you imagine somebody doing that beautiful black and white comic book? So many things going on there. The only reason why I wouldn't want any more is because, frankly, somebody would screw it up. But I'm old enough geek to I'm like, I can just ignore the parts I don't like. I think it was great. Eric, you have had me watch some things. I really appreciate this one.
Cool. Kino.
Despite the dog dying, I really liked this one.
Cool.
What I want to know was, how did they do the dog dying? I want to know.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't want to know.
There's certain things that you don't want to look too closely at.
Not wanting to look it up because I don't want to know. But I also
Right.
really want to know.
I don't think they actually do know a lot about how this was made, because I looked into it for stuff regarding the horses, and there's no records kept of any of that stuff.
It looked way too much like a dead dog. I did not like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, what would be the easiest way to get a matching dead to kill that one? I'm like, no, I don't want to know that.
They picked it up and it was limp. It was limp.
But it's possible, like, so when I went to see Skinny Puppy for the first time, they had a stage show where they did a vivisection on a dog, and it was like a multi-jointed, like, obviously it wasn't a real dog, but it looked real, and it looked so real that, like, that plus not eating all that day caused me to pass out. You know, it's like, it's possible to make something that looks like a dog that's not actually a dog, you know?
Yeah, but this was what, 1916?
Yeah.
And Skinny Puppy was when?
It would have been the
last century.
1989, 88, 88, 88, 89.
Yeah, last century. Because you
I
old.
worked with Ogre, by the way. But anyway,
What's that?
I worked with Ogre recently. That was fun.
Oh, cool. So for me, this is a thumbs up, but it's a thumbs up in that know that you're getting an incomplete film. So there are other silent films I would recommend before this. I hope they continue to work on finding bits of this and eventually, hopefully, restore all 6 hours of this, because every movie in my entire life that I have seen where more of it doesn't exist than does, and this includes modern films where, like, it gets taken away from the director and they cut out half the film, almost always suck compared to the original version, you know? So I'm thinking that this must be amazing if you could see all 6 hours of it, you know? You wouldn't want to sit through 6 hours in a row, probably, but, you know, like we do for a Netflix series these days, you know, or something like that. 6 1-hour episodes.
Bro, I tell you what, though, this reminds me of the experience. What you've given me is an experience of when we would go and we'd watch anime, where if it was dubbed at all, it was like maybe a fan dub. I mean, it was just like you're looking into this alien world and it's scratchy and grainy, and you're like, give me more of that. That's crazy, man. It reminds me of that experience back in the day. I mean, now you can watch everything everywhere all at once, sort of. But these things are actually obscured by time, and they got some good bones, man. I mean, I really loved it. So thank you for that.
So let me just clarify the anime comment for those who might be younger, like most of our audience. When we used to watch anime when we were in high school, we couldn't get it in the US. There weren't hardly any distributors of anime. So we would get bootleg tapes from Japan that were in Japanese, and none of us spoke Japanese. Sometimes we'd have to find somebody in anime clubs that knew Japanese, and they would translate stuff on the fly. Or we would just sit there and figure it out as best we could. But what we could see and make out were like, this is really good, you know? And that's kind of, I agree, the way it is with this. Okay, if you liked this, please like and subscribe, whatever platform you get our show on. We're on just about everywhere you can get podcasts. We're on Pandora, Sirius, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. If you really like us, give us a good review or 5-star rating or something like that. The best way to help the show actually is just to tell one other person about it. This year, we're actually asking you to tell 2 other people about it. Just help spread the word. We don't spend any money on advertising. We don't take money from advertisers. It's kind of all word of mouth. So just help spread the word that way. If you want to talk to us, there are a couple ways to do that. We have a Facebook group you can join, or you can write to us at GC8 Podcast. That's letter G, letter C, number 8, podcast@gmail.com. I want to thank our guest, Kino, for joining us this time. Thanks, Kino.
Yeah, thank you, Kino.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, this is Eric
That's as well.
signing off.
There's love, there's freaking womb envy,